Hello, this is my August reading wrap up. I dropped the ball on reading wrap ups in July because I read quite a lot in July and it just got away from me, and then it just felt too overwhelming to start it, so I just didn't do one. So we're starting over, and so far I have read 2 books in August, but I'm actually going to talk about 4 books in this video and in this portion, and that will make sense in a second. So the first book that I finished in August was Assassin's Fate by Robin Hobb, which is the 3rd and final book in the Fitz and the Fool trilogy, and also the final book in the Realm of the Elderlings series. So this is the last book in the series. And not, well, it's the last book in a series and the last book in a trilogy, so I really can't tell you anything about this, but I binge read the entire Fitz and the Fool trilogy in about 5 days, and I loved it. So that's why I kind of am talking about 4 books in this video, because I'm kind of talking about this whole trilogy at once, sort of. But again, even though Fool's Assassin is book 1 in the trilogy, it's still the final trilogy in the Greater Realm of the Elderlings series, so I can't tell you what the series is about either, which is not very satisfying, and I don't want to tell you how I felt about the ending because that's also a spoiler. So all I'll say is that I loved this trilogy. Hang on, Shinji wants to be let out of the room. Okay, so as I was saying, I loved this trilogy. I think it's my favourite series in the Realm of the Elderlings. That's difficult to say because I really enjoy all of the Fitz and the Fool series. I like the Life Ship Trader series, but not as much, and I liked the Rain Wild Chronicles, but not as much. I prefer the 6 Duchies stories basically, and I think I like this one best. And out of the 3, I liked Fool's Quest, which is the 2nd book, the best, but I loved all 3 of them. And I think probably the reason I liked Fool's Quest the best is because it is the slower paced of the 3 books, so that is on brand for me this year. So Assassin's Fate was the first book that I finished in August, although barely. I finished it on the 1st of August and like read the majority of it in July. Then I felt bereft because I loved that series so much. I loved that trilogy so much. I loved the experience of binging that trilogy so much, and I felt so immersed in that world that I felt a little bit like, okay, but what now? So I wanted to read something a bit different, so I read Astrid Parker Doesn't Fail by Ashley Herring Blake, which is the sequel to Delilah Green Doesn't Care, which I read last year, I want to say, but it could have been the year before. And I really liked Delilah Green, but I had no intention of continuing with the series because I felt like I didn't really feel that attached to Astrid and I wasn't too bothered about continuing, but it just seemed like a good fit for what I was looking for, and it was fine. I didn't love it. I didn't think I liked it as much as Delilah Green, and it's weird. So there's some steamier scenes in it, which I enjoyed, but on the whole it read quite YA, and as you know, I'm having issues with that at the moment, so that wasn't really working for me. And then so I finished that today and I was a little bit like, well, I'm back into the now what. So I'm feeling really lost with my reading at the moment, but I am now reading The Year of Yes, or Year of Yes, by Shonda Rhimes, and the audiobook is narrated by her as well. So I will check in with you again once I have finished that. I'm actually going to listen to it now for a bit, I think, while I do some journaling and update my journal and go through all of the books that I've read this year and really try to figure out which ones I've loved and why I loved them, and see if that can help me. So, see you soon. Okay, I've finished a few books actually since the last time we spoke. So the first thing that I read was A Year of Yes, or The Year of Yes, by Shonda Rhimes, who is, I think I already said, the producer, creator of Grey's Anatomy, along with a whole load of other shows, and I really enjoyed it actually. It's kind of memoir-esque, but really only focusing on a specific period of, yes love, of Shonda's life, because she realised that she was not allowing herself to experience various experiences because they scared her, and so she kind of like forced herself to experience them over this year of the S, and it enabled her to grow in unexpected ways. Sorry, Haruki is down here insisting on my attention, so let me just move over a little bit so I can reach him. Sorry about the weird angle. So yeah, I really enjoyed that. I don't know that it would necessarily be quite as impactful if you hadn't watched Grey's Anatomy, because she does make quite a lot of reference to that, and having read it I can see how much of her is in those characters and in that show, which I found really interesting because it's like my favourite show ever. So that really added to the experience of reading that book. I don't know that someone who hasn't watched Grey's Anatomy would quite get the same thing out of it, but I do still think it's a worthwhile read, and it's not very long either. Then what did I read next? I think I finished, yeah, I did finish the, sorry, I've got the dust jacket off it, The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren was the next thing that I finished, and this is loosely the sequel to The Soulmate Equation by Christina Lauren. So it's one of those kind of companion-y type books that follows a side character from The Soulmate Equation. I actually really liked it. I don't know that I liked it as much as I enjoyed The Soulmate Equation, but I did really enjoy the relationship that was in here. We follow Fizzy, who is an author, a romance author, and Connor, who works in television production. He's a producer, and he is tasked with creating a dating show, and what he comes up with is that Fizzy is going to be the female lead on this dating show, and she's going to have dates with these individuals that have been cast, and then the audience is going to vote on who she ends up going on a holiday with at the end, basically. And it also uses the DNA dating app from the first book, The Soulmate Equation, and of course it's a romance, so it's the romance between Fizzy and Connor that develops throughout the course of the story, and I really liked both Fizzy and Connor. I liked their personalities. There was a little bit of that, oh, he's so big and she's so small thing, but it wasn't a huge part of the plot, so it didn't detract from the story too much for me. And yeah, I thought it was fun. I read it pretty quickly, less than 24 hours, so I enjoyed myself with this one. And at the same time that I was reading this, I was also reading In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. Again, I don't have the dust jacket. I can actually reach the dust jacket for this one, so I'll put it back on. This is the Fairy Loot. Is it? Yeah, Fairy Loot version that I got in my adult Fairy Loot box a couple of months ago, I believe. And this one was very mixed. I really like TJ Klune's writing the books that I've read from TJ Klune already, I've enjoyed. So I've read House in the Cerulean Sea, which I loved. Under the Whispering Door I didn't like quite as much, and I did quite enjoy this, but House in the Cerulean Sea is still my favourite of the 3 that I've read from him. This one, I really liked the beginning and I really liked the end portion, but there's this bit in the middle that's a little bit of a travelling story, and it felt a little bit Wizard of Oz-ish, and I wasn't a huge fan of that middle portion, which is why I ended up picking up this as well to kind of get me through that middle bit, because I'm glad that I finished it, but I do, like, I understand why we needed that middle portion. It just wasn't my favourite. So yeah, I liked it, but I didn't love it. But I do think that quite a lot of people will like it, because a lot of people do like that kind of travelling from one place to another place to do a certain task and feeling almost episodic in that section, but I'm just not personally a fan of that, but I know lots of people are. So I would still recommend it. And I am hoping to read more TJ Klune. I want to read the, what's it called, the Green Creek series. The first book is Wolf Song, which I have there. Is that it? Yeah, right there. So I want to read that series as well. Yeah, so that's where I'm up to. I am currently reading Foundation by Mercedes Lackey, which is the first book in a light academia quintet set in Valdemar early on in the history of Valdemar, and I'm really enjoying that so far, so I will check in with you again once I have finished that one, or maybe once I've finished a couple of those, because I'm probably going to binge read the whole 5-book series. And I will check in with you again when I have some progress to report. Hello! So, since I last spoke to you, I have finished 5 books. So I was reading Foundation, which was book 1 in the Collegium Chronicles by Mercedes Lackey, and I decided that since I was going to read the whole series, all 5 books, back to back anyway, I just update you once I finished the series. So I should probably tell you the names of the books. As I said, that there are 5 of them, and I think it goes Foundation, Changes, Intrigues, Redoubt and Bastion, but I could have Changes and Intrigues the wrong way around, so let me just double check. Yeah, I do. So it's Foundation, Intrigues, then Changes, then Redoubt, then Bastion. And what I didn't know when I picked up that series is that the next Valdemar series, both chronologically and in publication order, is the Herald Spy trilogy, which follows the same characters as the Collegium Chronicles. So that is what I have moved on to. Sorry if you can hear wind, by the way, or any noise. It's really, really warm in my flat at the moment, so I've got this door next to me open. I've got a speaker that's covered, so hopefully it shouldn't pick up any of the wind, but if it does, it does. And I really enjoyed it. As I said before, it's like a light academia style fantasy, but from the 90s, so it's a little bit different. We follow a character named Mags, who at the beginning of the first book is working as a slave in a mine, and he's being really badly treated, and then his whole life changes when he is chosen by the companion Darlin, which, if you don't know anything about Valdemar, companions, they appear as large white horses, but they are these special beings that can communicate mind to mind with the person that they choose to be their companion, their partner in life. And once someone has been chosen by a companion, they become, well, first they become a trainee herald, and then eventually they become a herald. So Mags goes from being a slave in a mine and having an awful life to being a trainee at the Collegium, which is the, for want of a better phrase, magic school in this world. And it was just brilliant. I really loved it. Mags isn't my favourite character from Valdemar. That position is still very much held by Vaniel, which is the character from the last Herald Mage trilogy. But I do really enjoy mags, and I'm really glad that there is another series. In fact, I think there's another 2 series, the one I'm reading now and then Family Spies after that, that follow mags. So I had other reading plans, but when I realised that that was the case, I decided to just follow the mood and carry on with Valdemar. So that is where I am at. I think I probably will do a video on the Valdemar books at some point, because at this stage I have now completed 3 series, completed 1 book in another series, and I'm currently reading another book in another series. So I've actually this year read quite a lot of Valdemar and Mercedes Lackey, and I'm loving it. So until next time, which will probably be when I finish the Herald Spy trilogy, which I should do this month, I shall see you later. Okay, I wasn't so great at keeping you updated towards the end of August, so we have, I can't even do maths, 8 books to talk about right now. So I think where I left you was that I had started reading the Herald Spies, or Spy trilogy by Mercedes Lackey, which is the series that immediately follows the Collegium Chronicles series and follows some of the same characters and more additional characters as well. We get some more viewpoints. There is another series that immediately follows that one called Family Spies, which I haven't read yet, but I do want to. So I finished the Herald Spies, Herald Spies or Herald Spy? Herald Spy trilogy, which is book 1 is closer to home, book 2 is closer to the heart, and book 3 is closer to the chest. I don't want to tell you too much about what happens in these books, because of course we are directly following another series and I don't want to potentially spoil anything, because I do think I really need to do a Valdemar video. I'm going to do that. I'm probably going to film that after this. Where you can normally read whatever you want in Valdemar, I wouldn't necessarily suggest reading Collegium Chronicles, Herald Spy and Family Spies out of that order. But I'll explain that in that video. Either way, I really liked this trilogy. I couldn't tell you if I liked it more or less than Collegium Chronicles. I think I liked it the same. I like the characters, which is really good. There's, as the name of the trilogy might suggest, because it's based on spying, there's like mysteries to solve and that kind of thing, which is really good fun. What I will say is that this is true of Collegium Chronicles as well, but I felt that it was more true with Herald Spy trilogy, is that if you do not like books that focus on character development and character relationships and characters just in general, then the whole series, the whole Valdemar universe probably isn't going to be you, because it probably isn't going to be for you, because it is character focused rather than plot focused. Not that there isn't plot, but it's just the focus isn't on the plot, which also means that what typically tends to happen is the main conflict, as it were, of the story tends to, especially in Herald Spy, get wrapped up in like the last couple of chapters or even the last chapter. So the resolution of the main conflict is really quickly dealt with right at the end of the book. That really doesn't bother me, because I like sitting with the characters and dealing with things and watching them grow and watching them experience stuff, and then as long as things get resolved, I don't necessarily mind if that resolution happens quite quickly, as long as it's properly explained, which in my opinion it is, but some people won't get on with that, so that's just a little bit of a warning there for that one. But as I say, I did like the Herald Spy trilogy. After that, I wanted to take a quick break from Valdemar to read something a little bit different. Not too different though, because then I went ahead and I read The House Witch Volume 2 and Volume 3. I read Volume 1 earlier in the year. This is a sort of cozy fantasy series, trilogy, and we follow Finn, who is a house witch, and he is employed as the cook, the chef, the head of the kitchen at the royal palace or castle. So he is the king and queen's head chef, for want of a better phrase, and he's also a house witch, which gives him magical powers that allow him to protect his home, which becomes the castle that he lives in. And if you've ever seen, and I've said this many times before, but if you've ever seen the Disney film of The Sword in the Stone, then there are those couple of scenes with Merlin where he sings his little song to get, like, the first time he does it, he sings the song and it helps him to pack up his house so that he can go with Arthur. And the second time he does it is he sings his song and it makes all of the crockery and stuff in the kitchen where Arthur is working clean itself so that Arthur can go off and do something else. And that's basically Finn's magic. There's some more to it than that, but I won't go into that. But that whole vibe is exactly what you get in here. So it's still a pretty pastoral fantasy type feeling, but in a cozy way. Not to say that nothing, this is definitely more plot than something like Legends and Lattes, but it still has that cozy feel to it. There is a romance. I really enjoyed it. I actually think that volume 3 was my favourite. I think they got progressively better. So 1 I really liked, 2 I liked even more, and 3 was my favourite of the series. The audiobooks are really great as well. You can kind of tell from the covers the kind of vibe you're going to get from these. I think that's really good. There is a cat familiar who, he's not a prominent character, but he is a character, Kraken. In more ways than one is he a character, and I really enjoyed reading these and taking that little break from Valdemar to read those two, and that was another series that I finished. So I'll check in a minute how many series I managed to finish in August. And then finally I'm going to talk about all 3 of these, even though I only finished 2 of them in August technically, but I finished the 3rd one on the 1st of September. So I'm just going to talk about all 3 because they are 3 books in the same trilogy. And yes, it is another Valdemar trilogy. This one is the Mage Wars trilogy. So we have the Black Griffin is book 1, the White Griffin is book 2, and then the Silver Griffin is book 3. Now this is not my favourite trilogy so far in Valdemar. I didn't like it as much as the Collegium Chronicles or Herald Spy or even the Last Herald Mage or the Arrows trilogy. So this is my least favourite so far out of what I've read. I think that the reason for that is because this goes back to the history of Valdemar, and so I didn't settle into this into this story as quickly because it almost felt like a completely different world, and that possibly is not helped by the fact that this is co-authored between Mercedes Lackey and her husband / illustrator Larry Dixon. That did make a difference for me, not in a good way, I don't think, unfortunately. I definitely felt it's a subtle difference in writing style, and I'm not even sure I could explain to you what it is, but there was definitely a difference in the writing style between these and the other series that I've read that were just authored by Mercedes Lackey. I'd say these still have the same tendency towards rushed ending. That again didn't bother me here. I think I just didn't connect with the characters as well in this. But if you like books with non-human characters, then this is a really great series to go for, because as the names of the books might suggest, or at least one of the protagonists in each book is a griffin. And there is some magic. There isn't as much focus on the magic, I wouldn't say. And I'd say also, another warning with this one is it's called the Mage Wars trilogy, but really the Mage Wars are only a focus in the first book. I don't want to say much more than that because I don't want to get spoilery, but I'll talk more about that in my Valdemar video. But those are the books that I read in August and technically September, but we don't need to talk about that. So how many series did I actually finish? If we count the Mage Wars, which we shouldn't really because technically I finished that in September, but whatever. So that's 1. House Witch trilogy was 2. Herald Spy, that's 3. Collegium Chronicles, that's 4. I think that's it, isn't it? Oh no, technically I finished Fitz and the Fool in August as well, but let's not count that because we're counting we're counting the Mage Wars. And I probably spoke about Assassin's Fate in my, did I even do a July wrap up? Anyway, it doesn't matter. So 4 or 5 depending on how you slice it, but overall I read 17 books in August, not including the last book in the Mage Wars trilogy, so 18 if you do include that one. Which is really great. I had a really great reading month in August, really happy with everything I managed to read, really enjoyed most of it. I've been really trying hard to listen to the mood and figure out what my mood is telling me and to go with that, and I think it's been working. So that's this wrap up. I have already finished some stuff in September, so now that I finished this wrap up I can jump straight in to starting the wrap up for September, because as of right now it's the 5th of September already. And that's it for this one. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video and want to see more like this from me, then do think about hitting that subscribe button, and I hope to see you here again soon. Thanks, bye.